"Stop! This woman doesn't love my father. She has a lover." The words shattered the sanctity of the wedding ceremony like a stone through stained glass. Every head in the ornate church turned toward the young woman standing in the aisle, her voice trembling but resolute. Ashley's hands were clenched at her sides, her elegant bridesmaid dress seeming suddenly out of place as she became the destroyer of what should have been the happiest day of her father's life. The pipe organ fell silent. 200 guests sat frozen in their pews, their collective breath held in anticipation of what would come next. At the altar, John stood paralyzed, his weathered hand still holding that of his bride-to-be. His face, the face of a man who had built a financial empire from nothing, who had negotiated billion-dollar deals without flinching, now crumbled into an expression of utter confusion and devastation. And Melina, beautiful, perfect Melina, the 35-year-old woman who had transformed from secretary to the love of John's life, stood there in her pristine white gown, tears already beginning to stream down her carefully made-up face. Her bouquet of white roses trembled in her hands. "Ashley, what are you doing?" John's voice was barely above a whisper, but in the deadly silence of the church, everyone heard the pain behind those words. "Dad, please listen to me. Melina is having an affair with Leonard, with your Leonard, your best friend, your lawyer, your best man." Ashley's voice grew stronger with each accusation, fueled by desperation and the terrible burden of the truth she carried. The church erupted into chaos. Guests began murmuring, some standing, others pulling out their phones. Near the altar, Leonard, tall, distinguished, impeccably dressed in his tailored tuxedo, went pale, his jaw clenching as he took a step backward. "That's absolutely insane!" Melina's voice broke through the tumult, her accent thickening with emotion. "John, darling, you know this isn't true. You know me. For 2 years, I've been nothing but devoted to you, to your children, to your family. How dare she? How dare she make such horrible accusations?" She turned to face Ashley directly, her tears flowing freely now. "I've treated you like my own daughter. I've tried so hard to earn your trust, your love, but you've never accepted me, have you? You've never forgiven me for not being your mother." The words hit Ashley like a physical blow, and for a moment, doubt flickered across her face. It was true. She had struggled with her father's relationship with Melina. No one could replace her mother, who had passed away 5 years earlier after a long battle with cancer. But this wasn't about jealousy or unresolved grief. This was about protecting her father from a woman who saw him as nothing more than a walking bank account. "Show us the proof, then," an elderly man called out from the third pew, John's brother, Uncle Richard. "If you're going to destroy your father's wedding, you better have something to back it up." Ashley's heart sank into her stomach. This was the moment she had dreaded. Her hands moved to her small clutch purse, fumbling with the clasp, knowing already what she would find. Nothing. She had no photos, no videos, no tangible evidence. All she had was the word of her best friend, Sarah, who had seen Melina and Leonard together in a cafe in the neighboring town just 2 days ago, looking very much like lovers sharing an intimate moment. Sarah saw them. 2 days ago. They were together in Richmond, at a cafe. She saw them. "Your friend saw us." Leonard finally spoke, his voice measured and calm, the voice of a seasoned litigator. "Ashley, Melina, and I met to discuss the prenuptial agreement. We didn't want to bother John with the tedious legal details during such a happy time. We went to Richmond specifically to keep it private, to handle everything discreetly. There's nothing sinister about 2 people working on legal documents over coffee." It was a perfect explanation. Too perfect, but without evidence. It was her word against theirs. "John, I swear on everything holy. Melina said, moving closer to her fiancé and taking both his hands in hers. "I would never betray you. Never. Leonard is your friend. He's been your confidant for 20 years. He's the godfather to your youngest son. Why would I risk everything we have for what? This is madness." John looked between the three of them, his daughter, his bride, his best friend. Ashley could see the war raging behind his eyes. He wanted to believe her. She knew he did. But he was also a man desperately in love, perhaps for the first time since his wife had died. For 2 years, Melina had brought light back into his life. She had made him laugh again, had made him feel young again, had helped him remember that life could still hold joy. Oh, Ashley. His voice was cold now, hardening into something she barely recognized. "If you cannot provide proof of these serious allegations, then I must ask you to leave. This is my wedding day. Melina has been nothing but kind to you, to all of us. I will not allow you to destroy this moment based on hearsay and suspicion. Dad, please, leave. Now." The finality in his tone left no room for argument. Ashley felt tears burning her eyes as she looked around the church. Some faces showed sympathy. Others showed barely concealed satisfaction at the drama. Sarah sat in the back row, her face pale with guilt and worry. But there was nothing more Ashley could do. She had played her hand and lost. She turned and walked down the aisle, every step feeling like a mile. Behind her, she heard the organ music resume, heard the officiant clearing his throat and attempting to restore order to the ceremony. By the time she pushed through the heavy wooden doors into the bright afternoon sunshine, she could hear him pronouncing John and Melina husband and wife. Ashley sat in her car in the parking lot for a long time, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. She had failed. She had tried to save her father and had only succeeded in pushing him further away. And now, Melina had won. She was Mrs. John Harrison, with all the power and prestige that name carried. The reception would be happening now. Dancing, champagne, congratulations. Her father would be smiling, trying to forget the ugly scene his daughter had caused. Melina would be playing the gracious bride, forgiving and magnanimous despite the terrible accusations. And Leonard would be giving his best man's toast, probably making some joke about the unexpected excitement of the ceremony. Ashley finally started her car and drove home to her empty apartment. She had never felt more alone. Inside the grand ballroom of the Riverside Hotel, the reception was indeed in full swing. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over the 300 guests who had moved from the church to continue the celebration. John and Melina moved across the dance floor, her white dress flowing gracefully as he held her close. "I'm so sorry about Ashley," John murmured into her ear. "I don't know what's gotten into her." Melina pulled back slightly to look at him, her eyes still shimmering with unshed tears. "She's hurting, darling. She lost her mother, and now she feels like she's losing you too. I understand. I really do. I just hope that someday she'll see that I'm not trying to replace her mother. I'm just trying to love you." John's eyes softened, and he pulled her closer. "You're too good for this world, Melina. Too good for me." Across the room, Leonard watched them dance, a champagne flute in his hand and a smile on his face. But his eyes were calculating, cold. He caught Melina's gaze for just a fraction of a second, long enough to exchange a look that said everything that needed to be said. They had won. 3 months later, the dynamic at Harrison Financial Group had shifted dramatically. John and Melina had returned from an extravagant honeymoon in the Maldives, sun-tanned and blissfully happy. Immediately upon their return, Melina had assumed a position on the board of directors. John had insisted, saying that his wife deserved to be involved in the family business, that her insights as his former secretary gave her valuable perspective. Ashley had watched this development with growing dread. Suddenly, Melina was in every major meeting, weighing in on decisions that would affect thousands of employees and billions in assets. And worse, she and Ashley clashed constantly. "I think we should invest more heavily in the cryptocurrency market," Melina announced during a board meeting, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against the mahogany table. "It's the future of finance." "That's incredibly volatile," Ashley countered, her jaw tight. "We'd be exposing our clients to unnecessary risk. Our portfolio strategy has always been conservative and stable. That's why our clients trust us." "Perhaps it's time for a new strategy," Melina replied coolly. "Your father built this company on bold moves and calculated risks. Maybe you're too cautious, Ashley. Maybe that's why you're still VP of Operations and not CFO." The implied insult hung in the air. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. John Tiku, sitting at the head of the table, looked pained but said nothing. He had been caught between his wife and daughter for months now, and the stress was beginning to show in the lines around his eyes. The worst part was that Ashley and her father barely spoke anymore. Their relationship, once so close and warm, had frozen over since the wedding. John had never forgiven her for the accusation, and Ashley couldn't forgive herself for failing to stop the marriage. Every interaction between them was stiff and formal, conducted through assistants and memos rather than the easy father-daughter conversations they had once shared. Sarah, Ashley's best friend and colleague, watched the deteriorating situation with increasing worry. "You can't go on like this," she said one evening as they worked late in Ashley's office. "This is tearing you apart. Maybe I was wrong about what I saw. Maybe it really was just a business meeting." "No." Ashley's voice was firm. "I trust you, Sarah. We've been friends for 15 years. You wouldn't lie to me. And you're not the type to jump to conclusions. You saw what you saw. Then what are you going to do? You can't prove anything." Ashley stared at her computer screen, at the financial reports that seemed to blur together. "I don't know. But I can't just stand by and watch her destroy everything Dad built. There has to be a way to prove what she really is." The opportunity came 2 weeks later in the most unexpected way. Harrison Financial Group had decided to upgrade all employee technology, replacing the aging laptops and desktops with new, high-performance machines. Ashley watched as the IT department distributed the new computers, including one to Melina's corner office. An idea sparked in her mind. Dangerous, probably illegal, but potentially the only way to get the truth. That night, Ashley stayed late at the office. Very late. Until the cleaning crew had left and the building was dark and empty except for the security guards making their rounds. She knew their schedule by heart after 10 years of working there. In her desk drawer, she had a small GPS tracker, the kind worried parents put in their children's backpacks. It was tiny, hardly bigger than a quarter, with a battery life of several weeks. Moving silently through the darkened hallways, Ashley made her way to Melina's office. The door was locked, but Ashley had master access as VP of Operations. Her hands shook as she opened Melina's laptop bag and carefully installed the tracker in a hidden pocket. If anyone found it, if anyone discovered what she had done, she could face criminal charges. But if it revealed the truth. For 3 weeks, the tracker showed nothing suspicious. Melina went from home to the office and back. She went to lunch meetings with clients. She went to the gym, to the salon, to the grocery store. Normal, innocent activities that made Ashley begin to question her own sanity. Had she been wrong all along? Had jealousy and grief twisted her perception so badly that she had destroyed her relationship with her father over nothing? But then, on a Thursday afternoon, everything changed. Ashley was in a budget review meeting when her phone buzzed with an alert from the tracking app. She glanced down and felt her heart skip a beat. Melina had left the office at 2 p.m., supposedly to get some cosmetic procedures done at her dermatologist. But according to the GPS, she wasn't at the dermatologist's office in downtown Seattle. She was in Richmond, the neighboring town, 20 miles away from where she was supposed to be. Ashley's mind raced. She mumbled an excuse about feeling ill and left the meeting, grabbing her keys and rushing to the parking garage. Her hands trembled as she started her car, her mind screaming that this was it. This was the moment that would either prove she had been right all along or reveal her as a paranoid, jealous daughter who had let conspiracy theories destroy her family. The drive to Richmond felt both eternal and instantaneous. Ashley followed the GPS coordinates, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. The tracker led her to the Riverside Inn, a boutique hotel known for being discreet and upscale, the kind of place where people went when they didn't want to be seen. Ashley parked across the street, her hands gripping the steering wheel as she tried to steady her breathing. And then she saw them, Melina and Leonard, walking into the hotel lobby together. There was no mistaking them. Melina had changed out of her business attire into a casual dress that Ashley had never seen before. Leonard had his hand on the small of her back, guiding her through the door with an intimacy that spoke of practice, of routine, of a relationship that had been going on for far longer than just a few months. Ashley's first instinct was to storm into the hotel, to confront them right there, but she forced herself to think strategically. She needed evidence. Real, undeniable evidence. She pulled out her phone and began taking photos. The hotel entrance, the sign, the timestamp. She even took a photo of the GPS tracker's location data, showing that Melina's laptop bag was indeed inside the Riverside Inn at that exact moment. Then she waited. For 2 hours, Ashley sat in her car, alternating between staring at the hotel entrance and documenting everything on her phone. She took notes about the time, the location, every detail she could think of. And finally, as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, they emerged, Melina and Leonard, walking out together. But now their behavior was different. Relaxed, comfortable. Leonard's arm was around Melina's shoulders. As Ashley watched through her camera lens, zooming in as far as her phone would allow, Melina turned to Leonard and kissed him. Not a friendly peck on the cheek, a real kiss, a lover's kiss, deep and passionate, right there in the hotel parking lot, as if they were the only two people in the world. Ashley's hands shook as she captured it all, photo after photo. The kiss, the way Leonard's hand moved to cup Melina's face, the way Melina smiled up at him afterward, a smile that Ashley had seen her give John 1,000 times. But this was different. This was real. This was genuine. This was the face of a woman looking at the man she actually loved, not the wealthy husband she was using. After they separated, each getting into their own cars, Ashley sat in stunned silence. She had been right. All along, she had been right. But the vindication brought no joy, only a deep, aching sadness for her father and fury at the woman who had manipulated him so completely. That evening, Ashley didn't go home. She went straight to a 24-hour print shop and created a dossier. Photos, screenshots of the GPS data, timestamps, dates. She included a written statement from Sarah about what she had witnessed 2 days before the wedding. She compiled records of phone calls between Melina and Leonard from the company's phone logs. Nothing overtly incriminating, but patterns of communication that went far beyond what would be necessary for normal legal consultations. She even found expense reports showing that both Melina and Leonard had traveled to conferences in the same cities on the same dates over the past year, always staying in the same hotels. By midnight, she had created an irrefutable case, a thick folder filled with evidence of betrayal. At 7 p.m., Ashley arrived at her father's mansion, The sprawling estate in the suburbs where she had grown up, where her mother had planted roses in the garden, where she had learned to ride a bike on the circular driveway. Melina had redecorated extensively since moving in, erasing much of her mother's presence, but Ashley tried not to think about that now. She walked up to the front door, her heart pounding, the folder clutched in her hands like a weapon. The maid answered and looked surprised to see her. "Miss Ashley, your father isn't expecting you. He and Mrs. Harrison are having dinner. I need to see him. Now. It's urgent." The maid hesitated, then nodded and led her through the familiar hallways to the formal dining room. Ashley had eaten dinner in this room hundreds of times as a child, but never had it felt so foreign, so hostile. John and Melina were seated at opposite ends of the long table, engaged in quiet conversation over wine and what looked like salmon. They both looked up in surprise when Ashley entered. "Ashley?" John's face showed a mixture of surprise and wariness. "What are you doing here?" Ashley didn't answer with words. Instead, she walked directly to the table and dropped the folder in front of her father, photographs spilling out across the white tablecloth like a deck of cards. The images told the story more effectively than any words could. Melina and Leonard entering the hotel. Melina and Leonard kissing in the parking lot. Timestamps and locations. Evidence that couldn't be explained away or dismissed. John stared at the photographs, his face going from confusion to comprehension to devastation in the space of seconds. He picked up one photo, then another, his hands beginning to shake. When he finally looked up at Melina, his eyes were those of a man who had just realized his entire world was built on lies. "John, darling, this isn't," Melina began, but her voice lacked conviction. She had gone pale, her carefully composed expression finally cracking. "Don't." John's voice was quiet, but filled with such pain that even Ashley felt her heart break for him. "Don't insult me further with more lies. These are fabricated. Ashley has been trying to destroy us from the beginning. She's jealous. I tracked your laptop bag to the Riverside Inn," Ashley said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "I watched you go in with Leonard. I watched you come out 2 hours later. I watched you kiss him. This isn't fabrication. This is the truth you've been hiding." Melina stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "You tracked me? That's illegal. You can't—" "Get out." John's voice cut through her protests like a knife. "John, please, if you'll just listen. Get out of my house." The roar that came from John was primal, filled with months of suppressed pain and humiliation. He stood, his body shaking with rage and heartbreak. "Get out now, or I will have you physically removed. You have 10 minutes to collect whatever personal items you need. Everything else will be sent to you. Go, now." Melina looked between John and Ashley, seeming to calculate whether there was any play left, any angle she could work. But she must have seen the finality in John's eyes because she simply grabbed her purse from the side table and walked out, her heels clicking against the floor with each step. At the doorway, she paused and looked back. "For what it's worth," she said, her voice breaking, "I did care for you, John, in my own way." "You don't know what caring means," he replied flatly. "You never did." After she left, the house fell into heavy silence. John sank back into his chair, suddenly looking every one of his 63 years. He stared at the photographs spread across the table, his face unreadable. "Dad," Ashley began softly, moving to sit beside him. "I'm so sorry. I wanted to be wrong. I wanted— You tried to tell me." His voice was hollow. "At the wedding. In front of everyone. You tried to save me, and God, Ashley, I threw you out. I chose her over my own daughter. You were in love. She manipulated you, manipulated all of us. Even Leonard, your best friend for 20 years. How could you have known?" John let out a bitter laugh. "I'm supposed to be so intelligent, a brilliant businessman. I built an empire from nothing, and yet a 35-year-old woman and my own lawyer played me like a fiddle. How many times did they laugh about me? Do you think? How many times did they mock the stupid old man who was so desperate for companionship that he couldn't see the truth right in front of him? Don't do that to yourself. This isn't your fault." He picked up one of the photographs, the one showing Melina and Leonard kissing. His hands trembled slightly. "There's something I need to tell you, something that makes this timing remarkably fortunate." Ashley waited, a sense of dread building in her stomach. "Tomorrow morning, I had an appointment with my estate attorney. I was going to transfer 51% of all my assets, the company, the properties, the investments, everything, to Melina. I was going to make her the majority stakeholder in the Harrison Financial Group empire." The words hit Ashley like a physical blow. She felt the room spin slightly. 51%. But Dad, that would mean she would control everything. I would effectively be working for her. All the decisions about the company I built would be hers to make. Every property your mother and I bought together would be under her control. Your inheritance, your brother's inheritance, your sister's inheritance, all of it would be subject to Melina's whim. Why? Why would you do that? John's eyes filled with tears, the first time Ashley had seen her father cry since her mother's funeral. Because I loved her. Because she made me feel alive again. Because I was so damn grateful that someone young and beautiful would want to spend her life with a widowed old man that I wanted to give her the world. I was a fool, Ashley, a blind, grateful fool. But she didn't want your love, Ashley said gently. She wanted your money. And she would have gotten it all if I hadn't found out today. If I had waited even one more day. She would have owned everything, and there would have been nothing I could do about it. The prenuptial agreement she and Leonard drafted, the one they were supposedly working on in that cafe, it contained a clause that marriage assets would be split equitably. With 51% in her name, she could have divorced me, taken everything, and left me with scraps of the empire I built. The full scope of the conspiracy was becoming clear. This hadn't been a simple affair. This had been a calculated plan to steal everything John had worked for his entire life. Leonard, as his lawyer and closest advisor, would have known every detail of John's finances, his assets, his vulnerabilities. And Melina, with her position as his secretary and then his wife, had access to everything else. They had been planning this for months, maybe even years. The affair wasn't just about passion. It was about partnership in the most cynical sense. Partners in crime. "We'll destroy them," Ashley said, her voice hardening. "Both of them. We'll make sure they can never do this to anyone else." John wiped his eyes and straightened in his chair. Some of the strength seemed to return to his posture. "Yes, we will. I have the photographs. I have the evidence of adultery. My attorneys, my new attorneys, will have the marriage annulled by the end of the week. Melina will get nothing. And Leonard will be reported to the Bar Association. He violated every ethical code imaginable. By the time I'm done, he'll be lucky if he can get a job reviewing contracts for a shopping mall." "Good." Ashley reached out and took her father's hand. "I'm sorry you had to go through this. I'm sorry I couldn't stop it sooner." He squeezed her hand, his grip surprisingly strong. "You tried. And when I wouldn't listen, you didn't give up. You protected me even when I pushed you away. Ashley, I don't deserve—" "Stop. You deserve so much better than what she gave you. And Dad, we're going to be okay. We're going to get through this together." For a long moment, they sat there in silence, father and daughter, hands clasped across a table covered with evidence of betrayal. Outside, The sun had fully set, and the mansion was dark except for the lights in the dining room. It felt like the end of something terrible and the beginning of something that might, eventually, be healing. It is cool, as the legal proceedings moved swiftly. With the photographic evidence of Melina's adultery, John's attorneys made short work of the marriage. Washington state law was clear. Adultery was grounds for annulment, especially when there was proof of fraud and intent to deceive. Within 2 weeks, the marriage was legally voided, as if it had never existed. Melina made one attempt to fight back, claiming that the GPS tracking was illegal and the evidence should be thrown out. But John's legal team was prepared. They argued that the laptop bag was company property, that Harrison Financial Group had every right to track its own equipment, and that Melina had signed agreements acknowledging this when she became an employee and then a board member. The judge agreed. Leonard faced even worse consequences. The Bar Association launched a full investigation into his conduct. Sleeping with a client's wife while serving as that client's attorney violated so many ethical rules that the list was almost comical. Beyond that, his role in drafting the prenuptial agreement and the asset transfer documents while carrying on an affair with Melina constituted a clear conflict of interest and potential fraud. His law license was suspended pending the investigation, but everyone knew it was over. No firm would touch him. His reputation, built over 25 years of practice, was destroyed in a matter of days. As for Melina, she and Leonard disappeared from Seattle entirely. Rumors circulated that they had moved to California, or maybe Arizona. Some said they had split up, that the affair had been only about the money and without the prospect of John's fortune. There was nothing between them. Others claimed they were still together, scrambling to build new lives under the shadow of their failed scheme. Ashley didn't care. They were gone, and that was all that mattered. What did matter was her relationship with her father. In the weeks and months that followed the confrontation, they began to rebuild what had been broken. It was slow at first, too many hurt feelings, too much pain on both sides, but gradually, through family dinners and long conversations, they found their way back to each other. One evening, about 6 months after everything had fallen apart, Ashley and John sat in his home office, reviewing the quarterly reports for Harrison Financial Group. The company was thriving. Without Melina's reckless suggestions and Leonard's subtle sabotage of conservative policies, the firm had returned to its steady, reliable growth pattern. "I've been thinking," John said, setting down his reading glasses and looking at his daughter, "about the CFO position. It's been vacant since Patterson retired last year. I think it's time we filled it." Ashley looked up from her laptop. "I've been reviewing candidates. There are some strong options from—" "I want it to be you." She blinked in surprise. "Dad, I'm only 34. There are people with more experience, more qualifications." John smiled, a real smile, the kind Ashley hadn't seen since before Melina had entered their lives. "Ashley, you saved this company. If you hadn't stopped me from transferring those assets, Melina would own everything right now. Your instincts, your loyalty, your intelligence, those are exactly the qualities I need in a CFO, and more than that, those are the qualities I need in someone I can trust to eventually take over this entire operation. You're talking about succession planning. I'm 63 years old. I'm not going anywhere tomorrow, but eventually I will step back. And when I do, I need to know that everything I built, everything your mother and I built together, is in hands I can trust absolutely. Your hands." Ashley felt tears prickling her eyes. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes. Become my CFO. Learn everything there is to know about every aspect of this business. And when the time comes, take over Harrison Financial Group and make it even better than I ever could." "Yes," Ashley whispered. "Yes, I'll make you proud, Dad. I promise." You already have, sweetheart, more than you could ever know. They hugged then, a long embrace that felt like healing, like forgiveness, like the restoration of something precious that had nearly been lost forever. When they pulled apart, both were wiping away tears, but they were good tears, the kind that washed away pain and left room for hope. Ikikutua. 2 years later, Ashley stood in front of the full-length mirror in her apartment, adjusting the collar of her blazer. Her reflection showed a confident woman in her mid-30s, wearing a custom-tailored suit that projected both authority and style. Her title was now Chief Financial Officer, and the business cards in her purse carried the weight of one of the most respected financial firms in the Pacific Northwest. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Ready for the big day? You're going to kill it." Today was the annual shareholders meeting, and Ashley was presenting the 5-year strategic plan she had developed. It was ambitious, innovative, and guaranteed to secure Harrison Financial Group's position as an industry leader for the next decade. More importantly, her father would be in the audience. Not as the CEO, he had begun his gradual retirement, maintaining a position as chairman of the board but stepping back from day-to-day operations. Ashley had been effectively running the company for the past 18 months, and thriving. The relationship between father and daughter had never been stronger. They had dinner together every Sunday, often joined by Ashley's siblings and their families. John had even started dating again, carefully this time, with Ashley's blessing and approval. A nice woman named Patricia, a retired teacher with adult children of her own, who had no interest in John's money and whose life was full enough that she didn't need to cling to him for identity or purpose. As Ashley drove to the office that morning, she thought about how different her life might have been if she had kept silent at that wedding. If she had swallowed her suspicions and let her father marry Melina without protest, John would have transferred his assets, and within a year, Melina probably would have divorced him and taken everything. The company would have been destroyed or sold off piece by piece. The employees, many of whom had worked for Harrison Financial Group for decades, would have lost their jobs. The clients who trusted them with their life savings would have been betrayed. And John himself, he would have been destroyed, financially ruined, emotionally devastated, probably never recovering from the betrayal. But that hadn't happened, because Ashley had trusted her instincts, because she had refused to give up even when everyone told her she was wrong, because she had been willing to risk everything, her relationship with her father, her reputation, even her freedom, to uncover the truth. The story of the wedding interruption had become something of a legend in Seattle's business circles. Most people knew only the basic outline. The daughter who stopped her father's wedding was proven right about the bride's infidelity, and went on to save the family empire. Ashley had been featured in several business magazines as an example of integrity and courage in leadership. But the real story, the full story of betrayal and redemption, of a father and daughter who had nearly lost each other but found their way back, that remained private. That was theirs alone. As Ashley walked into the Harrison Financial Group building that morning, nodding to employees and exchanging greetings, she felt a deep sense of contentment. Not happiness exactly. The wounds from that terrible time had healed but left scars. But contentment. Peace. The knowledge that she had done the right thing, even when it was impossibly hard. In her office, she found a card on her desk. She recognized her father's handwriting immediately. "To my brilliant daughter," it read, "Your mother would be so proud of the woman you've become. I know I am. Thank you for saving me when I was too blind to save myself. Thank you for never giving up, even when I gave you every reason to. And thank you for reminding me what unconditional love really means. Break a leg today. Not that you need luck, you've got something far more valuable: integrity, intelligence, and courage. I love you. Dad." Ashley blinked back tears and carefully placed the card in her desk drawer next to a photo of her mother. Then she picked up her presentation materials, took a deep breath, and headed to the boardroom. She had a future to build, and this time it would be built on truth, trust, and the unbreakable bond between a father and daughter who had survived the worst and come out stronger on the other side. The end. Sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same, and sometimes the people who love us most are the ones who refuse to let us make the biggest mistakes of our lives, even when we beg them to stay silent. This is a story about betrayal. Yes, but more than that, it's a story about the courage it takes to tell the truth, and the healing that can happen when that truth finally sets everyone free.